Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about my ranking of the best Tatum knockoff in the Scream franchise, aka the best friend to that of the lead character. So, normally what a lot of Scream fans love to do is like rank their best movies or actually rank the movies and rank their favorite ghost face and everything. But I want to be different. I've always been different all my life, and I don't really like doing the norm of what other people like to do. So this is why I started this whole the best Randy knockoff and everything. So then I figured, every Scream has that best friend role. And so that's something that always gets overlooked in the Scream franchise. So I wanted to bring attention to that. First, who is Tatum Riley? And most people don't never say her last name. She's simply known as Tatum, and Tatum is such a cool name. So she was played by Rose McGowan, and she was only in one Scream movie. And for the most part, there's never really been no flashbacks of her. I don't know if I don't know who plays her in the Stab movies. And for the most part, her name just started to come back around. And let's see, the third Scream movie, what was it? Fifth one, and of course the seventh one and everything. But for the most part, Tatum was Sydney's best friend. And when I stopped and I thought about this list, I realized something. Sydney doesn't really have that many best friends. Think about it. Tatum was her first. Haley was her second from college. And then after Haley, she's never really truly had another best friend. Yeah, there was Dewey in the third movie who kept her location a secret, but that was more like a big brother overprotective type thing, and he's been protecting her since like the first movie and the second. Plus, when he got married to Gail, those two kind of went their own separate ways. They kept in touch, yes, but it wasn't like best friend type thing. Gail and her aren't really best friends. They're more like friends. It took a long time for them to even be friends. They started somewhere in the middle of Scream 4, and then in Scream 5 they was really close. And of course, Nev wasn't in the sixth one. And in the second one, Gail just turned nasty again, but she still is friends with that of Sydney, but I wouldn't necessarily call her BFF. So I can't talk. So Sydney really truly hasn't had a best friend since the second movie. It all comes down to either trust issues or she just doesn't want to see her friends get hurt or killed. But Tatum was Sydney's ride or die in the first movie. She was extremely close to Sydney. She was never rude and nasty to Sydney, never. She was always rude to other people, even people she dated and even people she was friends with. But Sydney was kind of like her Achilles heel. She would never turn on Sydney in a really nasty kind of way, or even in a rude, joking kind of way. And it's really interesting because I've seen that a lot in movies with other characters. You'll have the sweetheart type girl, but then her best friend is an extremely rude, nasty person, but is never rude and nasty to her. Same way it was in iCarly and in the movie Sugar and Spice. Tatum always had Sydney's back verbally. If you mess with Sydney, you have to mess with Tatum. And Tatum is extremely tough. Because let's not forget, when Sydney first started off, she was a really nice, sweet girl. Until the murders started happening and people started bringing up her mother. And she started to get a bit tough, but also a bit like weak in the head, like when those girls made fun of her mom in the bathroom and stuff. And so Tatum literally stood up to Gail and everything. She stood up to her own boyfriend, and it's just like, you don't mess with Sydney, because if you do, you're gonna have to answer to that pissed off blonde. And the thing about Tatum also is that, it really hurt her when Sydney asked her, do you believe the rumors about my mom and everything? And do you believe, like telling the truth when it came to Cotton Weary? It pained Tatum so much because she did not want to tell Sydney the truth, but she finally had to confess that, maybe your mom, there was rumors, what I'm saying, about your mom for years, always cheating on your dad and everything. And like, and Sydney got pissed and everything because, she's all like, how can you say that about my mom? Like, you don't talk about my mom. It's kind of like a Harry Potter father situation. You don't talk about his dad. And so, like, and you saw the pain in her, like, face. Tatum rarely looks sad or upset in the first Scream movie because she's always strong and she's always fierce. She always has an attitude when she's not joking around. And then, like, when Sydney dad was supposedly out of town and Sydney didn't want to be by herself because of the murders, Tatum was going to swing on by and they was going to spend the night together. And then after, Ghostface attacked her and Billy got arrested, she spent the night at Tatum's place, and slept in her room. Which I always look weird because they always look older than teenagers. And everything. And, and she also didn't really like Billy all that much. So, that is really who Tatum was. She was Sydney's ride or die. She was her best friend. She was like her bodyguard and everything. And so, what person in the Scream franchise best complements, like, the Tatum trope and everything? Whoever it is has to always be there for Sydney. Whoever it is, they can't, like, be, like, I don't know, like, antagonistic towards, like, whoever the new lead is. Because remember, Sydney's not always the lead. In the fourth movie, it was kind of Jill, and also kind of Sydney and everything. And because Sydney doesn't have a best friend no more, we have to go to other characters. So this list is going to be pretty short and everything, And I will include people from the first two seasons of the television series Scream, but I'm going to exclude people from the third only because I've only seen the third one time, and I really don't even know who the best friend in that series was. It might have been the Keke Palmer character, but the Keke Palmer character is very confusing because she had her own best friend in Manny. And Keke Palmer's character was never like the main lead. So the third season was always confusing and everything. And I decided not to add the people from Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, even though there was a really, really great, like, best friend, like, duo in that series. But I try to, like, block that series out as much as possible. And so, but like I said before, it's a very, very, very short list. And when it comes to that of, like, Scream 5 and 6, it's going to be even harder to figure out who the best friend in that was. Because in 6, Sam didn't have a best friend. I mean, she had a boyfriend and she had a sister. But of course, sister's going to be like her best friend anyways. I mean, I could add her, but, I don't know. And then what about the 5th? The 5th is going to be confusing because technically Sam is the main character but only her boyfriend is like, I guess you could say her best friend, but that's just a boyfriend. So I probably would have to go with Tara, she's the co-lead, and who her best friend was. Only because this is a short list and I need more people to talk about. And it gets a little confusing because, Sydney just didn't have that many best friends. So who is, I guess you could say, the best Tatum, right? So, at the very, very, very bottom, Amber from Scream 5. Now, like I said before, I don't know who Sam bestie was, but Tara had a best friend, and it was Amber. At least that's what we were led to believe. The only problem with Amber is, well, she was the killer and everything. Not only that, but we rarely saw her and Tara interact with each other. I remember back when Tara got her phone call, I think she might have assumed it was Amber, I think. I'm not 100% sure. But if those two are supposedly supposed to be like best friends, as it was like led to be, how come we didn't really see those two interact that much before the big killer reveal? Like, I don't get it. Like, she's there, she's part of the friend group, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like she never really acted like the best friend type thing. And then, of course, she turned out to be the killer, and she tried to kill both Tara and Sam. And she stole that of Sam's boyfriend. So she is the worst of, like, the worst. Next on my list is Chloe from Scream 7. Chloe is the new Tatum's best friend, and Tatum is one of the main, leads and the final girl. The only reason why Chloe is at the, next bottom and everything is because of the simple fact. For somebody, and I really don't even know if they're best friends. I know they're friends, but so is Hannah. And of course, Hannah died early. So that would have to leave Chloe as like the best friend material. Problem is, Chloe and Tatum rarely interact. They rarely talk. And not Tatum, but Chloe, whenever she is on screen, she's just there. And she interacted with that one guy a heck of a lot more than she did with Tatum. She never acted like she was worried that, Ghostface is after everybody, but she never acted like, oh no, I must protect you, or oh no, like this person could do harm to you, or oh no, I feel so sorry that this is happening to you type. It's just she's there because she has no character development, just like everybody else in that movie. And even Sydney doesn't have character development when you stop and think about it, like I said. Think about it. What does Sydney always do when Ghostface calls her? Since the first movie, she's always assumed it's not the killer. She plays around with the killer on the phone. Then when she finally believes it, then she acts scared and worried or really tough. She's like that in every movie. Nobody had character development in that movie. So because Chloe just wasn't developed that well, she just wasn't a good friend. And I wish they could have explained her a bit more, but sadly, as you know, they did not. Next on my list is Kirby. I know, some people gonna be pissed about that, but you gotta stop and think about it when you go back and watch Scream 4. Yes, Kirby was her best friend. Yes, Kirby would stand up for her and everything, right? And Kirby was tough like Tatum and rude like Tatum and had blonde hair like Tatum, but I never felt they were best friends. What really did they ever have in common? When they did talk, they never really truly had chemistry and everything. She was kind of just there and kind of just there to be the ride and kind of just there to be rude to Sydney's boyfriend. because this was technically a soft reboot of the first movie, very similar to that of the fifth movie. Because remember, the new younger people was supposed to be the main focus and all this other stuff, but that all crumbled once the legacy characters came back in, like, the fourth movie, because everybody just forgot about the new people. And so I feel like Kirby was a good friend. She just wasn't a good best friend. She was never really there to console Jill. You know what I'm saying? She was never there to ease her mind like Tatum did with Sydney. And that was always disappointing with me. Because I was just kind of like, Kirby's just kind of there and everything. To be kind of like this new Tatum. And she has more in common with Charlie than she does with that of Jill. Coming in at number 2 is Audrey from Scream Season 1 and 2. So because this is a television show, they're able to spread out the storyline and give more depth with that of the character. That's the one great thing about the television show. Sadly, however, the television show is a mixed bag and everything. Audrey has a very complicated life with the final girl, Emma. See, they were best friends when they were little kids growing up. But then Emma started hanging out with the cool, popular kids and forgot all about Audrey. So their relationship was strained and they just stopped talking to each other from when they were little kids on up until when they was teenagers, about 16 or 17 years old in high school. So a video of Audrey came out of her making out with a girl at like a parked car. This was a huge scandal because, this was like, 10 years ago or something like that? And she had never came out the closet. Emma, still, who was not friends with her, was like, supportive and stuff like that. Once all the killings started to happen, and because they were both friends with Noah, they kind of rekindled their friendship. Audrey, even though she is better friends with that of Noah, she tends to hang out with Emma a heck of a lot more. One of the reasons is because she had a crush on Emma back when she was a little girl. Because Audrey is like bisexual and stuff. And so, like I said before, even though her and Noah are like closer and were best friends, once she started being friends with Emma again, she started being Emma's best friend again. She always had like a complication relationship with Emma, but she always had her back once they rekindled their friendship, and especially because the killer was after her and stuff. And, she was basically her ride or die. But unbeknownst to that of Emma and everybody else, Audrey actually knew who the killer was, but she didn't know who the killer was. See, before the killer started attacking Lakewood and everything, the killer is Piper, and Piper is the half-sister of Emma. And so Piper used Audrey to get closer to Emma because Audrey actually invited her to do like, I think a documentary because Piper was like a journalist or something like that. And so Piper started pressing her about like, they started talking about like their lives. And I guess at some point Audrey mentioned Emma. And so Piper started pressing her about Emma to where she started spilling lots of stuff. This made Emma very, very vulnerable. But at the time, Audrey just didn't know like Piper was the killer. And also when this one character died and like she was hanging out with Piper at that time, people assumed that Audrey was like the killer. And the police assumed that for a very good long time. By that of season 2, Noah like found out. And he told her, hey, look, you need to tell Emma that you knew the killer all along, but you didn't know it was actually the killer because she used to and stuff. Well, she waited. And next thing you know, in season 2, the new killer, Kieran and everything, he started to blackmail Audrey and started having her do certain things, like steal the new Ghostface costume from, like, I think police custody or someplace, something like that, and had her do a bunch of stuff. Eventually, a voicemail leaked with Audrey's voice on there. And next thing you know, Emma found out and she was pissed. She confronted that of Audrey and like pushed her up against the lockers and everything. Now I know what you're saying. If she did all that, then like what qualifies her as being a good Tatum? Well, the thing is, like, she didn't know. She was just running off the mouth about her old best friend and everything. She had no idea this person was like the killer. Plus, on top of that, once, like, in season 1, in the big killer reveal, Piper was gonna kill Emma, but it was what's her name? Audrey that stepped in, and I think Audrey's the one who delivered the final like gunshot to that Piper, saving that of like Emma's life. But the thing that pissed Emma off is that once people found out that Piper was the killer, Audrey never told nobody she knew her and everything. So that would piss Emma off. And I can understand Emma being upset, because Audrey left out this crucial information. But even though they had a rift again, they eventually became friends once again because both of them were framed for like murder and they were literally on the run towards the end of the finale and stuff. But all in all, no matter what they go through, they always find a way to rekindle their friendship and have each other's back and everything. And and to me, that was like what like sets them apart, or what sets Audrey apart from like the other people I named. But of course, who is number one? Hallie. Hallie is Sydney's best friend from college, and I believe her sophomore year. Don't know how they met and everything, but they're like roommates and they're best friends and they go everywhere together. Holly, Haley. I think that's her name. It's either Haley or Howley or something like that. Is a really great character. Unlike Tatum, she's just nice. She's nice, she's sweet, she's pleasant to be around. She is sarcastic in a kind of like smart mouth kind of way, but not a rude, nasty kind of way. And that's the thing that sets her apart from that of Tatum. Tatum is just rude. And it's kind of like, okay, if she's rude, then you assume all her other friends she hangs out with are rude as well. But some of them are and some of them are not. And you ask yourself, what made Sydney want to be Tatum's friend? But you can totally see why she wants to be Howley's friend. She is just as sweet as sugar and everything. She's always there to console Sydney and she's always having her back. When Sydney's boyfriend got attacked by the killer, she's there in the hospital room with them and everything. They both were going to try out for a sorority. Well, it's mostly Howley that wanted to do it, but Sydney really didn't. And the thing that was just like so amazing was towards the end of the movie in the third act, when the killer, is killing people left and right and Sydney is not safe, the police wants to take Sydney away so that nobody knows where she is. And Hallie packed a bag and is all like, I'm coming too because I'm her best friend and everything. And that is something no other best friend has ever done in the Scream franchise. Well, probably except for that of Audrey, but Audrey has her problems because, of the rift between her and Emma. But Holly doesn't even think twice about it and stuff, And what got her killed was, of course, following Sydney and everything. Because the killer was only killing people based on the killings of like the last movie. So, of course, she's the best friend. She's gonna get it and everything. Even though her name is not a play on or nobody else's. And so when they was trapped in the car and they escaped, Hallie wanted to do the smart thing and just run away and get the police. But Sydney wanted to unmask the killer. So she goes back, and next thing you know, the killer's gone, and Hallie gets like stabbed over and over and over and over again. A lot of people don't bring up her, but she was such an amazing character and great black representation. She wasn't ghetto, she wasn't rude, she wasn't nasty, she wasn't trifling, nothing like that. It's the type of representation you want to see in a black character. Now, here's the funny thing about her character. She was slated to be one of the killers in another script. Because, when it comes to Scream, they have like hundreds of different scripts. So in case one leaks online, they can just go with the other. And she was slated to be a ghost face. And so this could be why she wanted to go with Sydney and everything, so that she could help kill her. But thankfully, they didn't go with that. And it's a good thing they didn't go with that, because it's kind of like, look, the first movie had no black people. The second movie had two. And it's kind of like, you really don't want, you know, one of the first black people in this franchise to be that. No, they had four black people, my bad. But you really, because two of them died early on in the beginning of the movie. And one of them lives. And then, of course, there's Hallie and everything. And you don't want one of them to be like the killer and stuff. So that's my ranking of like all the like Tatum knockoffs. And I truly believe Hallie is the best one. And in fact, I think Hallie is a heck of a lot better than Tatum. Tatum's more like hilarious and more entertaining. But Hallie is the best, greatest friend that Sydney ever had. And it sucks that she didn't name her daughter after her. But I get, they want to go back to the first movie and blah, 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 and everything. Alrighty. Well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.